Okay, enough already. All right, so I am Paula Farmer. I am the facilitator for the Glide Racial Justice Group. And we are had the lucky fortune to have Bavette come and speak with our group. So we are putting together this forum tonight so that we can learn a little bit more about the California Assembly and how we participate in voting and elections, and learn a little more about the hierarchy and structure. I'd like to welcome our guests first. We have with us Bavette Brackett and Micah Grant. If you want to unmute and just introduce yourself, and I'm going to have your bio a little bit after we finish this process, so you don't need to go into your bio, but you can just introduce yourself. Micah, you want to go first?
Sure, thanks. My name is Micah Grant. I am an elected official locally here in the city of Sacramento by day, and a former political consultant by night. I have about 14 years working in the legislature and for various political campaigns.
All right. And then we have Bavette Brackett.
Hi, everyone. My name is Bavette Brackett. I'm a San Francisco native of Afro-Latina descent. I am a small business consultant, and I've been doing that for almost 20 years. And I'm also a commissioner in San Francisco, as well as a community activist and board member of several different organizations throughout the Bay Area. So thank you so much for having me here today, and I'm excited about the conversation.
Excellent. So we'll start in our usual fashion with the crew. If I'm going to start with Martin, and Martin, if you can choose the next person to introduce themselves. Or maybe not Martin. Let's start. Linda, are you ready to go?
Sure. Hi, I'm Linda Mantau, and I am a proud and happy member of Paula's team, the Racial Justice Group at Glide, and here and get involved. And I would like to hear, or we would like to hear from Fiona.
Hi, everyone. I'm Fiona. I'm happy to be here tonight, and just excited to learn and get inspired with all of you. So I'm glad this came together. And I will call on Annie, who it's not one of our usual folks here.
Whoop. Well, hello. Thank you for speaking up and saying hi to me, Fiona. I'm delighted to be here through you. I remember hearing about this, I think a few years ago at Glide, and it's good to have that refreshed and really want to contribute what I can to this necessary endeavor. So thank you for having me.
Can you pick the next person, please? Just anybody on the screen.
Oh, I see. Okay, thank you. I will, how about Bavette Brackett?
And she's already gone, so.
Oh, I'm just getting, Tim, how about Tim?
Tim works.
Thank you.
Had myself on mute, sorry about that. My name is Tim Persine. I'm a community political volunteer. I actually live down in Palo Alto, but I'm involved in San Francisco, and I'm here through knowing Bavette and her involvement with the Assembly Delegate elections.
Can you pick the next person, Tim?
Oh, sure. Linda, have you? Linda.
Hello, everybody. I'm Linda Cummins. I'm a proud member of Glide and also a member of the Racial Justice Group. And I heard this wonderful woman on Tuesday, and I'm very anxious to hear her again, and anxious for everybody else to hear what she has to say to us. Thanks. And Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Paredes. I am a Grateful Glide member and member of the Racial Justice Group. And I'm looking forward to hearing both Bavette and Micah. I love when we have these forums and we learn more about issues that, to be honest, I might, just kind of skip over because I don't know enough. And I'm gonna call on Liz.
Hi, I'm Liz Woodward. I'm a GLIDE member and a member of the Racial Justice team. And I'm just excited to be here and learn more. Let's see, I'll call on Rachel.
Hi, I'm Rachel. I'm a member of GLIDE as well, and I'm just here to participate and learn more. And I missed the first 2 minutes, so I don't know who hasn't gone yet.
Just give it a go. I don't think Fiona, Liz, Sarah, Martin is the only person who hasn't gone. I don't know if he's on. And Maurice and Tamika and Perry.
Martin?
Marty might be stepped away. How about we go with Maurice?
Hi, everyone. I'm a San Francisco native and the executive director of a nonprofit, and I'm just here to support and learn and support our ADEMs.
Great. Okay. And who else is at the bottom down here? Tamika? She already went? Is that correct?
No, I haven't gone. Hi, good afternoon. Well, good evening now. My name is Tamika Hamilton. I was invited by Micah Grant, who was also my consultant through my congressional campaign. And I'm also an Air Force sergeant here at Travis Air Force Base. So I'm just glad to be here and meet all of you.
Great. And then we just had, I think that's everybody? All right, and Perry just logged off, but she'll be back. And Perry is our guru of tech and office and things like that. So she will be popping in and out, taking care of us. And so we'll go ahead and get started, and let me share my screen. Hold on one second.
I'm sorry, Paula, I think Tom arrived just too late to introduce himself.
Did he pop out again? Because I don't see him.
I'm
there you are. Hey, Tom.
I'm Tom.
Introduce yourself, sir.
I have no idea what to say in this
That's
particular.
who you are and what you do.
I'm Tom Butler. I write and make documentary films, and I am a member of GLIDE, and I care about this stuff. And I have no idea what else to say.
That's good enough, Tom. So we're going to go ahead and get started. I want to, if I can actually find my slide, I want us to refamiliarize ourselves because there's some folks in the room who don't normally meet with us. So these are our community agreements that we have within the Racial Justice Group, and we try to create safe spaces so that everybody can stay with the meeting. And this is one of those times where we'll be truly diligent to that work, in that we have a nonpartisan topic that is a tender touch for many right now with everything that's been going on. So if there's anything that is missing from this list that you need to feel safe in this space, please let us know. And if we could just go ahead and popcorn these out for folks who are on the phone so that they can hear them. I will start. It's okay to it's okay to respectfully disagree. It is not okay to blame or shame yourself or others.
Be aware of intent and impact.
Practice self-care and take a break when needed and try to come back to the discussion.
Practice both and thinking.
Maintain confidentiality.
Notice your process and your content. Don't manipulate the situation.
Lean into discomfort and take risk. Try on a new idea.
Approach this work with a beginner's mind.
Mind your blind spots.
Excellent. So is there anything that anyone else needs to add to this list to feel safe right now? Great. So if you can choose one that might be particularly hard for you, and just stay present with that thing so that you can set an intention to work on that today. And we're going to get started. So we have with us, for our visitors who are with us, these are the 6 things that we are working on as a group with the Racial Justice Group. One of our initiatives is Black Trans Lives, Black Women, Food Insecurity with emphasis on children, police reform, reparations, and voter suppression, which brings us to our meeting today. So with us today, we have Bavette, and this is a little bit about her background. Bavette, while people are reading over this, could you go ahead and load your presentation, as it's not loading for me for some reason? And I will give you control to share.
I gotta say, it's nice to actually see you, Bavette. I was beginning to think you lived at that coffee shop on Market Street.
Oh, hold on. Open to Micah. So for those who are on the phone, Bavette Brackett was born and raised in the Fillmore District, attended a public schools throughout San Francisco, and later raised her family in the Bayview Hunters Point. She spent her entire life fighting for working families and progressive policies that help create social, racial, and economic justice for all. For the past 16 years, Bavette has owned the Brackett Group, which specializes in delivering transformational business consulting services to nonprofits and small businesses throughout the Bay Area. In 2019, Bavette founded the Big Black Brunch, a monthly meetup to help build community and the Black economic power base in San Francisco, one brunch at a time. In her free time, I don't know where she gets it, Bavette serves on various commissions and boards of directors for organizations throughout the SFB area. For her representation matters, and she hopes to inspire and help other Black San Franciscans obtain leadership roles in San Francisco commissions and boards. Okay. So I'm going to stop my share, and I'm going to give you sharing privileges. All right, Bavette, give it a go.
Paula, did you want me to do presentation now, or did you want me to do let both of us introduce ourselves before
Sure,
I go into?
We can do that. We can do that.
That way, it'll give a little bit of context to what we're going to be discussing today.
Okay. And hold on. I'm used to working with the fancy. Let's see, here we go. Wow. There we go. I'm coming, Micah.
Oh, don't worry. I'm good. I hate to follow behind Bavette anyway, so this is actually perfect.
Oh, don't even go there. He's being super modest. Don't let Micah fool you. He's the one.
Okay. All right. Why is it not showing? Can you see my screen?
I can see that you have started sharing your screen, but nothing has been shared.
Right now.
Okay. Well, let's do this then. That's not it. Oh, maybe it is. There we go. Oh, Micah Grant. Thank you for your patience and time. So Micah is a veterans communications professional who has worked in both houses of the California legislature as a consultant. He most recently was vice president of Mercury Public Affairs, where he developed, directed, and executed strategic communications campaigns for a variety of clients, including government relations work, grassroots marketing, and media relations. He is a Natomas Unified School District trustee where he is dedicated to ensuring 15,000 K-12 students receive a world-class education. He also serves as the chair for the California Black Media, providing journalistic services to a network with more than 40 African-American media outlets in California that reach more than 1 million media customers. He earned his BA in communications at UC Davis and a master's degree in business with a marketing emphasis from the University of Phoenix. Micah, his wife Janae, and their daughter London live in Natomas. Together, they enjoy reading, exercising, and gaming. Welcome, Micah. Did you want to add anything else before Bivette starts?
No, I can't. It would just pale in comparison. So we could just go ahead and get started.
Okay. Bivette, I think you can share.
Okay, so let's see. It says you've disabled participant sharing, so you might have to give me permission again.
Oh, hold on a second. There you go.
Okay, let's see. Yay, there we go. Okay.
And oh, Reggie just joined us as well. Hi, Reggie. Feel free to use the chat if you want to document your questions before we get to the Q&A. Bivette, do you want to wait till the end, or do you want folks to raise a hand, or how do you want to work?
What I'll do is I'll take little mini breaks in between so that if people have questions or concerns. So that's what I'll kind of do, because it's probably about a 15-20 minute presentation.
Okay.
So again, thank you everyone for being here. My name again is Bivette Brackett, and I am a San Francisco Democrat. I was born and raised here, came from a family of very politically motivated. In fact, even though my parents were immigrants, my dad actually helped create a political party back in Belize, because he's always believed that the power of shaping community should rest in the citizens' hands and the neighbors. And so I got involved in politics really young, as most people do in San Francisco. And from there on out, I've been a lifelong Democrat. And about 6 years ago, I kind of got fed up with seeing certain elections kind of disenfranchise whole sectors of communities, especially the faith-based community, and kind of took a different position. And that's how I met Micah. So even though both me and Micah are UC Davis alumni, I'm actually a Democrat and he's a Republican. And today what we are going to be talking about is around the California Democratic Party KDEM elections, or Assembly District election meeting that's going to be coming up. I'm not sure if most people are aware, but if you are a registered Democrat in San Francisco, you're eligible to participate in this election. And I will get into talking about why that's important. My presentation is pretty much done from a African-American lens. And the reason why I'm doing that presentation is because, as you guys are well aware, these last 4 years under Trump has been very difficult for the Black community, especially in the South, where we have seen voter registration and voter suppression efforts throughout the US, as well as specifically within the Black community. And just this past November, we saw people still waiting in super long lines. So I'll just hop into my presentation because I don't want to make it too long. And so there's several themes that kind of came up in the last 4 years as we have gone on to this road to getting who we have now as our newly elected or elect POTUS and VP, Biden and Kamala Harris. And so as you can see, the Black community has kind of been in this discussion around whether or not they should participate in the Democratic Party or they should leave. I know that some people have heard the word Dem exit, even though that didn't happen. However, there has been a rising concern within the Black community that while we overwhelmingly vote Democrat, a lot of times policies don't reflect the needs of our community. And so there's this question or leaning question going on of, you know, what does the Black vote really mean to the Democratic Party if we don't have proper representation within the party? So if some of you may not be aware, I'm just going to kind of go over what the Democratic Party structure is, just so that we can, I can clearly explain to you where the Assembly District Delegates fall under that. So at the national level, we have the Democratic National Committee. All parties have a similar structure. Michael will be talking about the Republican National Party later, but I'm going to just discuss from ADEM. So for the Democratic National Committee is at the top. Right below them are all of the 50 state parties. And so we are the California Democratic Party, also familiarly known as CDP. So if you hear people in political circles talking about the CDP, they're talking about us here in California. And so the California Democratic Party is also made up of what we call delegates, and those delegates are called the Democratic State Central Committee. Those delegates are split up between 3 different separate bodies, and there's 3 different ways that they become delegates. All of them must be elected into those positions. So if you look on the left-hand side, furthest left, those are your county central committees. So it's often called the DCCC. Some of you guys may remember what the DCCC is because you just saw it on your ballots back in March. So you kind of want to think of it as every 4 years in the primary, right before you vote for the presidential election, you will be voting for your DCCC representatives. In San Francisco, because we are both a city and county, our DCCC is called the San Francisco Democratic Party. So when you get those mailers that say San Francisco Democratic Party endorsements, they come from these body of elected officials who you actually get to choose. Typically, our Democratic County Central Committee were reserved for more grassroots people from the neighborhood, because we wanted to have a neighborhood representative kind of being able to say who should receive our endorsements and so forth. But as our party has become more contentious in San Francisco, those positions have now kind of been heavily taken over by elected officials or people who have a lot of name cachet. And what that means is that the endorsement process and the power structures have become more centralized and not democratized the way that we believe our Democratic Party in theory should work. And so the next body of delegates are the elected officials. So those are our state elected officials. Those make up of persons like Scott Wiener, David Chu, our assembly members, our senators like Dianne Feinstein, and then also persons like Elenis Koulounakis, who is our lieutenant governor right now. And then the one that we're going to be talking about today, which is also very important, are our Assembly District Delegates. This makes up 1/3 of our party's decision makers. And why this is so important is because this changes every 2 years. These delegates are responsible for shaping the party, as well as helping elected officials and others create various different resolutions and the party platform and so forth. So I'll get into that into details, but just so that you guys have a kind of a clear picture of what Assembly District Delegates are, I just wanted to go on from there. And right now there are currently over 10 million registered Democratic voters in California. Does anyone have any questions?
Bivette, it's Micah.
Yes.
And so since you have a presentation here, if I could kind of just hybrid with you a little bit and kind of talk about Republican structure on the way, because it's actually quite similar, if that's okay.
Yeah, jump on in.
Yeah, so the same process would apply on the Republican side. Anywhere you see a D, just put an R. RNC, Republican National Committee. We have the California Republican Party. And then we have, actually, that would be our version of our State Central Committee, right? Our board is made up of people from all over the state. And then we have county parties, elected officials, and then the only thing different on the right side of this chart would be we have our delegate system isn't based on assembly or just assembly. Delegates can come from a myriad of ways. You can be appointed by the board, the state board. You can be appointed by elected officials. You can be appointed by state senators or assembly members. As Republican participation in our democracy has dwindled, now there's even some opportunities for local officials to appoint delegates because you actually need Republican electeds to have delegates. So structure is largely the same, and we're talking about roughly 6 million registered Republicans in the state.
I had another quick question, Micah, because that was interesting that you brought that up. We do, some of our elected officials, our state elected officials also have the ability to nominate or appoint up to 6 Assembly District Delegates. So aside from the ones that we vote on and our kind of operating body or our rules our rules committee and stuff like that, we do have that opportunity, but we also vote for our Assembly District Delegates. Are you saying that the Republican Party, you guys don't vote for your Assembly District Delegates?
No, what happens is that an assembly member gets appointed, or a person who's run for office, such as Tamika on this call, and that person, win or lose, is given an amount of delegates to give out, right? So if you want to affect being able to give out delegates, run for Congress, run for state Senate, win assembly, then you can appoint. And so there's a smaller pool of delegates on the GOP side. It's about 1,600. And then they make all the decisions at a convention in cooperation with the Republican National Committee and the California Republican Party. But our delegates are kind of like a jungle system. If you run, you got them. If you win out at a primary, you probably get them. And if you become an elected official at the state level, then you can appoint delegates who then meet at a convention twice a year to make large decisions on behalf of the party.
Yeah. So we have that system as well. So the Assembly delegates, the elected officials in DCCC, the same way that the Republican Party has their conventions, we have our Democratic Party conventions every May, and also I believe every November, or I want to say October or November. So we do that as well. So it's called our conventions, and it moves around to different cities within the state. Back in 2018, we actually had the convention here in San Francisco for the first time in almost like 20 years, but it was still very under the weather. Was anyone here, can I get a raise of hand, did anyone attend that 2018 convention here in San Francisco, or did you guys even know about it? Tim, you raised your hand. Did you want to say something?
I just went to some events that were tied to it in San Francisco, like for Mayor Breed and things like that. But I don't have much more that I can offer.
Okay. You didn't actually get to attend the convention that was at Moscone Center, did you?
Right. No, I was just some events around it. That's all.
Okay. Anyone else?
I didn't do San Francisco, but in 2016, I did the one that was in San Jose.
Okay, awesome. What was your take on that, Paula? How was your
Well,
experience?
I went because this was right after we had our discussion at that other election that you were part of. And so I volunteered to work the convention to see if I was interested in trying to become a delegate.
Oh, awesome.
So I just did sign in and got to meet people from all over the state. And then I ended up missing my train. So I stayed over another day and went the next day. And that's when they revealed Kamala for the first time. She was running for district attorney or something. Oh, no, she was running for Congress or
Senate.
Running for Senate.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, who is this person? Because the woman who got up, who was the incumbent, was very apologetic in her speech, like she knew she was going to lose. And I was like, well, who is she running against? And then Kamala. And I was like, oh my goodness, it was amazing. And I would do it over again. I would encourage anybody just to watch that machine work. It's great.
Yeah, so the convention is wild because you get people from all over the state, all converging onto one city. It's all of the elected officials throughout the state. And like Paula said, sometimes if it's a presidential year, you'll see presidential candidates coming in, making speeches with their whole entourage. There's, congresspersons, senators, the whole gamut. And just a little bit of tidbit to make it kind of funny. that year there was drama, and that's why she gave kind of that speech. The woman who was running against Kamala at one of the parties that happened, I believe the night before, she got drunk and made some racial epithets. And so the word went around like wildfire, and I think some people even had a video of her. And so that is another reason why she ended up losing her Senate race. So just give you a little bit of context of how it goes down at conventions, and just to remind people, don't get drunk at conventions. Like, but a little bit more to what you were saying, Paula, in terms of you running, thinking about running for delegate that year. What spurned me and actually made me want to run for a delegate, as Micah knows, is that when they set the time for these Assembly District Delegate elections, it's usually in person. And typically in San Francisco, it's usually on a day, on a weekend, and it's usually in some obscure location, and it's kind of very much centered around being an insider inside of one of the Democratic clubs or one of the machines that are already going on throughout our city. So the average person, even though San Francisco has about 500,000 registered Democrats, less than 5,000 actually participate in this election every 2 years. And so I jumped in because on that particular year, they put the voting time during the faith-based sermon time. So voting was actually moved to, I believe it was like 11 to 1 p.m. that year. And so I was like, you're totally disenfranchising the faith-based community. They won't be able to participate, and you guys need to change the time. And of course, they were like, who's this girl trying to tell us what to do? And I was like, I've been to assembly delegate voting in all these different places for the last 10 years, and this is just unconscionable. And so I ended up running as a delegate to bring awareness around having fair election processes, having more open, transparent processing, and then also that the Democratic Party, as much as it spends on doing mailers and endorsements every year, they should invest in educating people about the Assembly District Delegates. So I'm going to move to the next page. And so again, every 2 years, Californians, we elect 8M elections across, there's 80 assembly districts. And in each district, we elect 14 delegates, 7 self-identified female, and the top vote getter for 7 other self-identified female delegates get in. So before it used to say 7 male identified delegates, but as we know, gender is fluid and not everyone goes into the 2 binary terms of female and male. So as the party recognizes the diversity and the LGBTQ community, that's why that language was intentionally changed this year. So yay. And so if you look at the photo here on the right, you'll see that our city is split between 2 assembly districts, and it's not a straight line down the middle. We have Assembly District 19 on the left-hand side of the city, which is done by Phil Ting, and we have Assembly District 17, which is David Chu, Assembly Member David Chu. And if you see 8019 actually goes down the peninsula, it goes into parts of Daly City and almost into some outskirts of South San Francisco. So 8019 is much larger than 8017, but ironically, 8019 traditionally has half the amount of participation that the 8017 delegates have. So in the last election, it only took, I think, about 300 votes or 400 votes for someone to be able to be elected to this position. And in 8017, conversely, you had to receive about 2,000 votes. And the problem with this type of election, when we have it in person at these obscure locations, is that it's very hard for people with disabilities, it's very hard on our elderly, and it's very hard for women and children because it's usually an in-person voting, and it usually rains, and people are standing in the rain for hours waiting, in long lines that go around the block and down the block, and it takes them almost 2 hours just to get in the building to cast a vote. In the past, there were not any language appropriate ballots. That has since changed since my uprising 6 years ago. So there has been change, whether you are a delegate or not. So I'm just going to go into what do delegates do, just so
Vivek, could I jump in here real quick? If you go back to the other slide, Just
Yep.
real fast. So sorry. I'm just,
No,
like I said, I'm going to ride your success like I've always done. So, so the Republican side is a little different, right? And this is actually pretty important to note. Delegate positions in the GOP are coveted, right? And so there's no every 2-year election. For instance, I've been a delegate for about 10 years because I've pretty much been hanging out with elected officials for 10 years, right? So I'm always in a position to get a delegate. Or if you're on a county central committee, you're automatically a delegate, right? And so the Republican side is really kind of like the Illuminati. I mean, you really have to kind of know someone to become a delegate or get an appointment that way. So they're not elections. The only way I guess you could move your way into becoming a delegate is if one, an elected official retired and then there was a new person that was elected and he appointed you as a delegate. They're really hard to come by, and that's why they're 15 to 1600.
Well, I'll say it's actually similar in ours. I didn't really get into the politics of it, but just to be honest with you, like I said, this ADEM election is pretty much held as a closed door process. And so how they do it on the Democratic side is it's the illusion of democracy. It is still very much almost appointment situation. There, as you guys have seen, or those of you who have heard about ADEM, there's usually slates, and those slates are put on by our Assembly District members. And then the opposite slates, so we've had the last, I guess, 10 years, typically Assembly Member Ting and Chu will select who he wants to be on his slate, and they have the money and the machine to get out information to those voters to come out, show up, and turn out the votes, versus the people who are not on that slate, they typically never win a seat. It wasn't until about, I would say, 10 or 12 years ago that there became two competing slates on 8017, but 8019, Phil Ting's slate kind of kept, its power in terms of, being more diverse, having both what they would call progressive and moderates in San Francisco on the same slate, whereas on David Chu's side, due to some, political beef between David Chu and David Campos, there had been traditionally, once he took over, the dual slates. And so what that means is that someone who, there's no longer the ability to have representation from the small guy because they don't have access to voter records. They don't have money to run a campaign. And if you notice, these elections happen right after a 4-year cycle or a midterm. So typically people are done with, the presidential election, and then this pops up, right around Christmas time. Hey, you guys, get involved in this election. And people are like, what's going on? Because you never hear about it other than when it's time to vote. The process to become a delegate is also oftentimes closed. A lot of the times people don't find out that they can even become a delegate until after the deadline. And the deadlines are very quick. So the deadline this year to become a delegate was December 18th, I believe. And the deadline to actually register to vote. So this year it's all vote by mail. The deadline to even register so that you can vote in this election is tomorrow. So literally, if you're not registered to vote in this election, you can't vote, even if you are a registered Democrat. So you actually have to go to the website and request a ballot. They don't give you one automatically. And so, like I said, again, if you're not in the know, same way Micah said, you most likely are not going to be a delegate, number one, or number two, you probably wouldn't even vote in this election because you have no clue and you don't even know about it. Unless you're, like Micah said, tied into an elected official, or you're a member of some major Democratic club that either puts up candidates or endorses candidates for this. So I'll move to the next one. Does anyone have any questions? If you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand. If you don't know how to raise your hand, I can give you a little bit of, it should be on the bottom of your screen. There should be a reactions button and you should be able to raise your hand or clap or put a thumbs up. If you use any one of those icons, that will let me know that you want to comment or you would like to say something, and then I can address your question or comment as we move forward. Is that okay? Fiona?
Yeah, hi, thanks. So I guess my question is like, if it's historically been such a closed thing, how much change can happen to that? It seems like so many people don't know about this, don't put energy into voting for someone. How can that be changed? It sounds like it's a real like sort of really going against the stream of what's happening.
So Vivek, could I take a whack at it on at least on my end? Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead, Micah.
Okay, so on the Republican side, yeah, I guess I would say the philosophy and the ideology would be more, hey, if you know about it, you know about it, right? It's more kind of free market oriented. I'm quotation, air quotes for those who can't see, meritocracy. All you have to do is meet a certain amount of conditions, you can be a delegate, right? And so they write the rules intentionally in a way, especially when elected officials get involved, that it's not like the barrier is impossible, but people are really busy, people have their lives, and the level of engagement you have to be aware of from a, I would say, parliamentary perspective, understanding bylaws and knowing how things work, you have to be really clued in. And so the biggest way I think a lot of people have found success, at least on the GOP side, to get into the delegate system, Republicans love to primary each other, meaning if you're the elected official and you're doing a good job, but we're not happy with some of the things that you're doing, we're going to organize in a room and we're going to run someone against you, right? And knock you out of leadership. Even you could have done everything right except one thing, and they'll try to knock you out and then get some delegates that way. I've seen people go in on a slate together and show up to a central committee meeting and make a fuss that way. So it's possible, but I would say on the Republican side, there's a lot of lethargy. People just aren't motivated to really make that move in there. And when you are hit with an overwhelming amount of parliamentary procedure, it can be discouraging, right? You're like, hey, am I going to go home and cook a meal for my kid, or I'm going to read 30 pages of Republican bylaws? I mean, most people are just like, look, this is not worth the time. And so it is an uphill battle, but I've seen a lot of changes happen. And I think what you see is a lot of these central committees are paper tigers because they're so used to going unchallenged. When someone does show up with a strong voice like the Vivek and has some energy behind her, and it's like, look, we're going to organize people. You will see changes, even though they tend to be very incremental and slow. I've seen energy really change some things. I would encourage you to, go in numbers, if anything.
Hey, Tim, I saw your hand up. Do you want to say something as well?
I learned how to raise my hand on Zoom, so I definitely accomplished something. Well, I'm wondering about especially AD 17, which is where Bayview Hunters Point is. And I'm wondering, I understand the work you're doing, but in terms of like the democratic machine, what work or lack thereof do you see going on to reach communities of color in Bayview with this? Not counting the work you're doing, I understand, but just the machine.
Well, I think it goes back to that first question that I raised at the beginning of my presentation, is that the Black community feels that the Democratic Party only comes to them during an election when they want to vote, and they don't talk to them about these ADEM processes, which are really the grassroots ways for candidates to gain name recognition and be able to put forth substantive ideas to really transform the party to have policies that really address their needs. If you look at what the concerns are of the Black community has been for the last 40 years, it's been the same, and that's why in some ways, Bernie kind of did really well in the Bayview. He did really well in the Mission District. He did really well across a lot of California, because some of those things that Bernie was fighting for are old things that people have been asking for over 40 years. And now we've gotten to a point where it's become a critical mass where all people of all races are now fighting for equity, are now fighting for, affordable college tuition, affordable housing. We have seen the economic inequalities raise even in urban areas now. And now everybody's looking at you know, everyone's suffering pretty much across this country, and people are trying to figure out ways to alleviate that. Within the suffering, there are a lot of people that are also doing very well. And so, you know, those huge gaps, I'm an economist by trade. They also affect quality of life. And so those are some things that we discussed maybe 30, 40 years ago when, you know, a lot of those campaigns around going around the world and paying $1 for a child or donating money to other countries. It was based on that theory that when you have extreme income inequalities in any nation, the quality of life of their citizens goes down. However, when you make investments in people and you bring people to more in equilibrium of income, then you see birth rates get higher. You see longer death spans and stuff like that. So also what we're seeing now is the reduction of the quality of life for most Californians because of these huge inequalities. And now people are forced to address those issues. You know, before it was just, hey, it was the Black people in the ghetto. They're the ones suffering. You know, we'll get to you later. We have these other issues, you know, whether it be wars in the country or, you know, prison industrial complex, or maybe it was fair trade or whatever. Those were always the issues. And now the kind of personal issues are coming to the forefront. Does that make sense? Kind of.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions before I move on? So moving right along, our delegates are very important, and they're very powerful because not only do they choose the chair of our party, vice chair, secretary, and controller, they also endorse candidates in local and statewide races, which goes back to what Micah says. Most people don't have time to research every single initiative that's on the ballot. They don't have time to research every single candidate. So a lot of times we rely on these organizations that are familiar to us to provide endorsements to tell us who would better suit our needs. And this is where that whole, you know, having the California Democratic Party endorsement almost seals you into being able to win a seat. I will bring this down a little bit to the ADEM side in terms of that endorsement process, just to give you guys a little bit of background on where we are with the ADEM process. Because these seats have become more coveted around political circles, like Micah said, this is now called for. What is now happening is we're doing endorsements for ADEM now. That was never the thing in the past. In the past, it was more or less you were on a slate, you were a community member or not a community member. People supported you because they knew the work that you did in community. So it's more around your work. Now it's like, who's endorsing you? Do you have that endorsement? And this year in particular, it's even more contentious because now there's like 3 and 4 slates going on because a lot of people of color did not get on some of the other traditional slates. And so now they're creating their own slates and or getting the coveted endorsements that typically those larger slates would get from like clubs like a Harvey Milk or an Alice or a Bernie Kratz or someone else. So that also is changing the landscape of politics in San Francisco. And because we're still dealing with just voter suppression and disenfranchisement of this whole ADEM process, it's also driving up the money that it costs to actually just even reach out to your neighbors to make them aware of these campaigns, because now people are all competing and buying, you know, spending enormous amount of money phone banking and phone texting just to churn out votes. So if you guys have gotten any texts, raise your hand. Has anyone got any texts about the Dem Party election? Anyone here? Oh, Rachel, yay. Who else has gotten a text or a phone call from the Democratic Party?
The text, and then once I registered, I started getting the emails.
Okay, so Rachel, what did you receive? Was it a text or a phone call?
Yeah, I just received a text actually right when this meeting started, like 10 minutes beforehand, and it was just making sure, it was asking if I wanted a ballot to participate in voting.
Okay, awesome. Did the person say their name or did they?
No, they didn't. They didn't say their name. It was just asking. Let me see if they. Oh yeah, they did. Abel. It was Abel.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah.
They were. That's it.
So everyone should probably expect in the next couple days, between today and tomorrow, you will probably get the infamous text if you are a registered Democrat. You'll get a text or a phone call from someone. I was actually managing some phone banks today for Slate. And so yesterday and today we did 4 hours of phone calls to reach out to our neighbors to make sure they knew about this election. So I'm gonna keep moving right along. If no one else has questions. Delegates also can sponsor resolutions, vote on policies, and also help shape the California Democratic Party platform. And for those of you who are not aware of a platform, what the platform is basically our guiding principles. So it's similar to like what you would call a playbook for a football team. It's like a triangle offense. And so it's an established set of values that we take into our next cycle, and that all of the candidates under the Democratic Party must align with those. And so I know that you guys are probably more familiar with the Democratic Party's platform. So I'll give Micah a chance to kind of talk about what the Republican Party platform is, just so we can give some context to that as well.
Well, we used to have a platform. It was recently hijacked, for those who are paying attention nationally to what's going on. But on the philosophical side, what I would say is that why Republicans face unique challenges, and maybe this exists on the Democratic Party side, is that the Republicans are usually a little bit more resistant to change. And so anything that's put in on the platform side, where candidates could actually win in other districts who may disagree, the Republicans hit them over the head with the platform and go, hey, well, that's not in the platform, so you're not going to make a good candidate, right? And that's been really, really, really destructive. And so I will talk about some of the old school values of the Republican Party, kind of like the Jack Kemp era. It was really just focused on limited government, right? Not that we don't need government. It just, to the extent that it can adversely affect your life, we want it to operate smoothly. And the general philosophy is that there are two sectors. There's a public sector and there's a private sector. And the larger the public sector grows, is the smaller the private sector becomes, right? And so that's typically Republican philosophy, tend to be more less restrictive, I would say, economic from a business standpoint. There's a huge evangelical base, faith-based community that's fairly traditional. Really, I think there's been some evolution, I would say, on trying to be more aware and tolerant and inclusive, but that is a never-ending discussion in the Republican Party. And so right now there's more of a libertarian bend, meaning, you know what, let's just make the government less important and let's just focus on education and business. And so that's where kind of things are right now from a philosophical perspective.
I wanted to jump in here because I I'm a nerdy birdie. So I did go and read you guys' platform.
Sure.
And I saw, what was interesting is like when I read the actual California Republican Party's platform, it looked almost similar to the Democratic Party platform. Like there was literally this whole big thing around racial justice and equity. There was this whole, and I was just like, how did Trump hijack this? Or like, how did certain Republicans hijack the movement? You know, I was just kind of shocked. I was even looking at some of the work or the thoughts around education. There were some minor differences, but you know, for the most part, when I was reading it, I was just kind of shocked myself. Like, wow, there's a lot in here, and it almost looks like the Democratic Party place. Someone go in there and steal.
Well, probably, right? Just to be
like,
well, just to be candid, I mean, there's probably a likelihood that's true, right? I mean, the focus on, I've been doing GOP politics since I was 18 years old, right? And you know, one of the things I've asked the GOP is like, hey, if we're so business oriented, is it good for business to not talk to other people, right? I mean, if you're the party of business, you would think you would have had a business plan a long time ago to reach out to people and go into new markets, right? That's a fundamental part of business. But what I will say, it's the application of it, right? And sometimes if you're more conservative, you do want to believe that, and I think it is, right? I don't want to offend anyone on this call. I think this is a great country, but if you're more conservative, you are less reticent to call out things because you're like, hey, we're all American. We can solve this together. It's fine. We don't have to get down to a more granular level. But I think there's more of a movement these days to say, hey, it's not a crime to call out specifically when something specifically happened to another group, right? And so I was at a forum a couple of months ago where, in our conventional thinking, I asked some of the guys in the group and said, hey, if you have a wife and she goes to visit a mechanic, what would you tell your wife? And most of the guys in there are saying, well, we kind of think if you're a guy mechanic, you're going to go try to trick a woman, right? And to maybe upselling her on things she may not need for any various reasons. I'm just speaking earnestly here. And I said, well, okay, so you believe your wife, right? And they're like, well, yeah. So if a black guy comes to you and says, hey, I got pulled over 150 times, why wouldn't you believe me? They said, oh, we never thought of it that way, right? And so there seems to be this so much focus on, hey, we're all Americans that it's just not absorbed that people can experience America differently. And so while I think it's in the platform, there's an older generation of Republicans who want to just bypass this conversation and say, hey, look, we're trying to reset the rules. Let's just move forward without hat tip into that trauma or ongoing trauma that's going on in a lot of these communities.
Yeah, and it's great that you brought that up because it's been really interesting for me because even though like a lot of people are like, oh, good God, she's like the worst progressive. She's like on there all the time. And she's like, she's always talking about the Democratic Party, always talking about, progressive policies, always talking about, helping the poor, the homeless, and da, 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 da. Like, how do you even have a Republican on your page or, all that stuff. And what I've seen also in the last 4 years, like you said, the Republican Party was primarily hijacked. But even before that, I've seen the kind of awakening of Black Republicans specifically who have, denounced the racism and all of the things that are happening and really started having those harder conversations with fellow white Republicans and Latino and Asian Republicans to start trying to have more of that racial lens. And it wasn't necessarily just the younger folks. I'm noticing it's kind of like the 50 and under crowd. I'll kind of cut it at 50. But do you have anything to say about that, Micah?
Yeah, I think, I want to pay respect to the congressional candidate out of CD3 who ran against John Garamendi on this call, right? I mean, it's you are walking into territory where it's just largely misunderstood, right? And I do think it is a younger crowd that probably grew up a little bit differently and is trying to force those conversations. And the faith-based community is big in the GOP, right? And so you grow up hearing, hey, well, you're a child of God, doesn't matter, like you're a child of God, right? But it's like you almost have to just, again, start introducing new semantics into these areas, right? It's like, well, if God made people in his image, he might be a handsome Black man. So let's have that conversation. And he made people differently. And so we need to talk about how people are experiencing things. And it's generally received a little bit better from the younger generation, right? Because it was kind of ingrained in us to look at things differently. So.
Yeah, and I think that's a perfect segue into my kind of conversation about why this ADEM election is so important, just beyond the duties of the delegates, is because in that sense, we actually do shape the party in those ways. We do put forth new resolutions that can totally shape the way that we as a society deal with some of these issues, whether it be racial justice, criminal justice, healthcare, and so forth. And so if you guys remember, a story I like to talk about is also gay marriage. At one point that was not a party platform, and it took San Francisco and Californians to make that a priority within the Democratic Party, that we acknowledge that. And so that was only done through having enough delegates that were there to vote that into our platform as yes. And so that's how strong the delegates can be. We pretty much shape what we want this party to be, what our values are as Democrats, what our values are, and what our priorities are. And so to the extent of Micah as well, seeing what has happened within the Republican Party. I've never been a Republican, but there's people who take pride in being a Republican, and they can also take their party, back through the delegate system and other elected positions to make sure that that is a priority, that we do start electing people who have lived experience, who can speak to some of these different ways that we as Americans experience life and the challenges that comes with that, so that we can have a more equitable society. And I think that that is the beauty of having this discussion today and trying to really share this gospel of why it's important to do your civic duty, why it's important to know about these elections, because these changes just don't happen out of thin air. They're actually people who are in these positions who are making decisions on your behalf every day. And you need to know who those people are, because they represent you, and if this party isn't what we want it to be, and we know that even the Democratic Party isn't what we want it to be right now, we know that the tent is still very small. And if we really want to expand the tent, we need to have people who are intentional about expanding that tent. And the best way to do that is for us all to get informed, get involved, and also inform others. And so I'm going to go into how you can participate. And so, as I stated before, you must be a registered Democrat in order to vote in the upcoming ADEM election. If you voted in the November 3rd election as a registered Democrat, you're eligible to vote. If you were no party preference, you are eligible to change your vote registration to become an official Democrat and be able to vote in this upcoming election. The process is going to be a little bit more difficult because you have to be registered with the Secretary of State as a Democrat. So you may, if you're a no party affiliation, a libertarian or someone else, and you want to switch over to being a Democrat, you have to go on the Secretary of State and actually re-register to vote and change your party declaration. At that time, you'll probably get a confirmation that says that you've submitted that, and then you would apply to vote. And so in order to request a ballot, you would need to go to ademelections.com and register. If you were not a Democrat and you tried to register, it will automatically reject you because it will come up in their computer system that you didn't vote in this past election and you weren't registered as a Democrat. And then you would have to take that confirmation number and send it into the adem@elections.com email, and then they would have to do the back shop to get you in as a voter and then send you your ballot. So it's a little bit more difficult if you're not a registered Democrat to even participate in this, but I'll just go over quickly the easy way, because if you are a Democrat, you basically would go to ADEM elections before tomorrow night. It's literally a 1-minute application. You're just putting in the same information that was on your voter ballot in November. So your first name, your last name, if you had a middle initial, your phone number, your email address, your date of birth. That's it. And you hit send and you'll get a confirmation code at the end. That confirmation code, you're going to want to hold on to that, because this year you don't go in person. Everything is vote by mail. So the party will send you kind of a receipt that says, hey, you're registered to vote. And then they will mail you your ballot. Once your ballot comes in the mail, you need that confirmation number, because that is your specific voter ID. That you put that confirmation number on your ballot and then you can vote. The other thing that's very difficult this time is that typically when we vote by mail, it's always the postmark date. It's always like, oh yeah, they'll accept it if it was postmarked by the November 3rd date. In this specific election for ADEM, it is no postmark. They have to receive your ballot by January 27th at the P.O. Box in Sacramento. So if you receive your ballot anytime after January 20th and you put it in the mail, especially due to the long times that we've been having at USPS, it may not get there by the 27th. And at that point, your ballot is void. So you would have done all that work and your ballot doesn't count. So we are urging people to please mail in your ballot back no later than January 20th. And if you are unable to mail it in by January 20th, or maybe you receive your ballot after then, we are encouraging you to email us at e4slate@gmail.com to arrange a pickup or drop off time. It will be COVID safe. It will be contactless pickup and drop off. And we will actually drive your ballots to Sacramento on the 26th and the 27th. So we are doing that as a public service because we want as many people to participate. We don't want anyone's ballots to be spoiled. We don't want anyone to be disenfranchised from the process or not be able to get their ballots where it needs to go. And we want everyone's voice to be heard because your vote is your voice. So does anyone have any questions right now about the ballot process?
I had a question, Bavette.
Yeah.
So this is happening every 2 years. Do you have to re-register every 2 years?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Because this is considered a special election. It's not, and so this is also the fight that I've been having with them also the last 6 years. I had asked for this process to be here. I asked for there to be an online process for voting. I've asked for a vote by mail process, and it actually took the pandemic to push the Democratic Party into actually having a vote by mail option. However, the issue that I have as well is I'm not a delegate, so I wasn't in the planning of how this rolled out. I am actually upset by the process of this whole confirmation code because it lends itself also to a real issue with voters. You know, like you said, this is already a short election. It's already an election most people don't know about. And to then require people to keep this confirmation number till they get this ballot and put in the ballot and make sure that it's accurate. And if it's wrong or they mess up on the numbers, it could cancel someone else's ballot. So that's the other challenge that I'm actually upset about. And I feel like that shouldn't have happened. They should have actually mailed people's ballots with a confirmation code already on it, you know, not leaving it up to people to try and, so I still have my my beef about the process, but this is where I'm actually happy that we're having this process right now. So I don't know what the ADEM elections, Paula, frankly, will look like in 2 years. I imagine they keep this as being an option because you know how it is. Once it's an option, you can't go back. And also because so many people complained about standing in those lines for hours and hours on end to vote. I don't see how the Democratic Party will be able to go back from that. But I think another reason why they probably did this confirmation code and forcing people to register, even though they have your record and they could have just sent you your ballot, is I think they were trying to save money. I don't think the Democratic Party really had enough money to mail out 10 million ballots right after, you know, a big presidential election. So just think about it in that terms. There's 10 million people registered and they didn't have a process like this where people had to request the ballot and they were forced to send everyone a ballot. Even if they sent everyone a ballot, most people probably wouldn't even know what the ballot's for. They wouldn't even recognize it because, like I said, less than 5,000 people out of 500,000 typically participate in this election. So they were looking at it from the perspective that waste of money, you know, post-COVID. And I think it's also they're trying to like feel it out, like what is gonna be the future of elections for the party. I would love to had seen them mail a ballot to everyone just so that it would make people wake up to the fact that they can vote for their delegates and it doesn't have to be an appointed process or such a closed door process like Michael was talking about with the Republican Party, which we kind of similarly have here in the Democratic Party. So go ahead, Paula.
What am I doing?
I saw your hand raised.
Oh, that was my question.
Oh, what was your, oh, okay. That was your question. Does anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, I actually tried to do this registration and I just voted. And I even went, after I tried this once, I went to the Secretary of State registration form and made sure I was putting in my address exactly as it was. And I got it and I put it in and I still got the same, we do not have your record from ADEM. And I sent them an email, but I haven't heard back from them.
Okay. So I want you to put I'm going to put my email in the chat. And then if you want to email me, I can get in touch with someone within the party. So this is also the same issue. as you can say, insiders. So, I have the inside track because I have been feeling these issues for the last month, whether it be candidates or individuals who were thinking about registering to vote. For the past month, there were candidates who were actually being rejected from being candidates in certain districts because their voter information was inaccurate, or they just couldn't find them, or the system wasn't able to find them. So like, again, there's probably millions of voters that this is happening to, which goes back to the whole reason why we're here, voter suppression. If what happens when our voting systems don't even recognize people who are actually voters, what happens, and does that, is someone going to be as committed as you are, to, then send an email? Most people aren't. Most people just found out about the election. They're like, hey, I submitted, it said I couldn't vote, I'm over it.
I wouldn't be this committed if you hadn't been talking to the racial justice group on Tuesday. So, and I've voted in one of these before, but it's been years. But I wouldn't be trying this if you weren't here talking about it.
Yeah, and I guess that's the other thing that's funny. What made you not vote after you hadn't voted in years? Did you just not know about it anymore, or what was the challenge? Like, once you found out about ADEM, why did you have that period of not participating?
The time that I voted, I was specifically asked to by someone who was a delegate, or at least a candidate. And subsequently, she didn't run, and nobody talked to me about it, and I didn't pay attention. And again, you showed up, and all of a sudden I'm paying attention again.
Oh, thank you. Well, and so that's what I'm saying. Like, this process, when we have closed door democracy in these ways, we're actually hurting our community. We're making people feel like they don't belong. And then we're creating a system to where we have so many people within our party who are angry after the fact, not understanding that they have the power to be included in all of these conversations and decisions from the beginning. Like, I know that there was even a lot of backlash during Obama's run. People wanted to be at the convention, and they wanted to be delegates. And they were like, how did those people get to be delegates? Why didn't I get to be a delegate? And, people were running around like, who were the delegates for my area? Like, it was just like, and the actual delegates were hiding out. They were like, they didn't want to tell anyone they were delegates. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. Did anyone else have a similar experience of like wanting to know who their delegate was during any presidential year or something like that?
The person I voted for in the story I just told was in fact a delegate and did exactly what you just described.
And so that doesn't feel good, that doesn't feel good. And it lends towards kind of, Taquan put it in the chat, this whole idea of Blexit, which was the Black people leaving the Democratic Party. So I'm going to go to my next slide, which basically says next steps. And it's basically an opportunity for us to do it together right now. If you have not requested your ballot and you are a registered voter, you can actually do it with me right now by opening up your browser and going to www.ademelections.com. Would anyone like to do it right now?
I have a question.
Yes.
This is Annie. I actually registered last week, and I got a confirmation number, and it seems that I have hopefully just temporarily misplaced it. I can't quite find it in the usual spot. So if I go on and do it again, will I get knocked out of the process because I'm asking to register again, although I've already registered?
Yeah, it may it may say that you're not eligible to register. It might give you that same kind of notification that it gave Tom, even though it was for a separate issue. So what you can do, Annie, is if you want to send me your email address and your voter information to my email address, I can get in touch with someone at the party and let them know that you have misplaced your confirmation number. This is also the reason why we're doing it together, is because I'm recommending everyone to take a screenshot of their ballot confirmation code and sending it to our e4slate@gmail.com so that we can have it on record for you. this time
brilliant.
around. So if
Yes.
people lose their confirmation number, they can email us and we can send it back to them again when their ballots come.
All right.
So also something interesting that happened that was not a part of the process that just happened to me last night was I got an email saying my ballot was on the way. How cool is that?
Hey, Bivette,
Yes.
I did the same thing. I tried to register the other day and it rejected everything. And as far as I knew, I was a registered Democrat. And that's been my understanding my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And I vote, and I have voted every election.
I might
And-
even be able to help you guys before I send the email to the state party because I actually, I'll get into it in the next slide, but I actually have the entire voter registration data from the last election from 11/3. So I have the whole file from Department of Election of every single voter in San Francisco City and County in 17 and 19. So I might be able to find you and send that off to you. Not necessarily your confirmation code, but maybe how your ballot may be filled out exactly so that you can match that up and try and send that in again. But
and will it also say that I'm a Democrat?
no, if you were already a registered Democrat, then like I said, it'll come, I can find you in my file. Like I actually have the file with everyone. I have the file with Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, and no party preference. So I have the entire voter world. It's just a huge file and it takes a while to go through it because it keeps buffering because it's so big. But I can probably find you and both Dom in that file and figure out, you know, what is the idiosyncrasies that are happening with the data thing. One thing that happened to one of the candidates, D'Anthony, who you're going to see him on this page, is that as you can tell, some people have apostrophes to their name. Because his name had an apostrophe, it was doing the same thing to him. He couldn't even register as a candidate. And we found out that the computer system wanted him to put a space instead of the apostrophe. So he had to write in his name, DE space Anthony Jones. So it's little things like that. So if you have a hyphenated last name, there's different things that can trip up the system right now. And so this is a slate of people that I am supporting. And the reason why I did this slate was because our 8M process is part of an institutionalized racist practices in Americans' politics. Being that, as Micah said, you know, if you're not near to an elected official, you typically are not even chosen to be on a slate. 9 times out of 10, a lot of the slates are created in these vacuums, and people of color are pretty much thought of as an afterthought and seen as someone that they have to have on a slate for the look, you know, to check the box, will you say. So a lot of times you'll see slates with a varying different people from all different backgrounds, but you will only see most likely one Black male or one Black woman on the slate. So it's a quota, almost into a quota system. And so I did this slate to kind of show the diversity of the Black community, of Black candidates who are running in this race, who have strong community ties, who would like to be part of shaping this party and putting forth policies that actually work for communities. You know, these are people who are tried and true in their communities, have come up with various different solutions to community problems, and they need to turn into policies so they can happen on a greater scale and help uplift and take people out of poverty or create more equitable systems across the state of California. So if you can see, you know, each one has kind of their area of expertise, but everyone is pretty much fighting for almost all of these things. And so our mantra is basically that we're not necessarily a slate, we're more of a campaign, and we're running to, because they're a diverse group of community leaders who believe that it's time for the Democratic Party to implement policies that address the needs of the African American community and put forth an agenda centered around racial equity, education, environmental justice, and economic opportunity for all people. And I say that to say that because, as you guys saw in 2020, one thing that happened that was huge with all of the accusations of Brexit, with BLM, with all of the trauma that most Black communities went through, they still showed up in record numbers at the poll to deliver us the Senate, to deliver us the presidency. And at this time, they should also have a seat at the table. Right now, the California Democratic Party delegates, Black people make up less than 1% of the delegates across the state. As far as, so there's clearly no representation whatsoever, and we'd like to see that change. And because San Francisco has always been on the forefront of all of these types of equity issues, I think it's high time for us to send in loud resonating to the state that we are trying to have equity. And that means that we need to let people who are from these marginalized community have a voice for themselves. They don't need other people representing them, speaking for them. They can and have spoken for themselves, and now they deserve a seat at the table. So
Can I jump in and add something here?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Micah.
I believe it was Linda that asked the question earlier. If it's not, forgive me, about, hey, is it all worth it? And the reason why, like, even though obviously Bivette and I don't see everything philosophically the same 100%, I have a great deal of respect for her. Because one thing I know about beating overwhelming establishment, it can be beat by overwhelming grassroots, right? I've never seen a situation where the establishment truly could 100% empowered establishment versus 100% empowered grassroots. I've always seen the establishment lose. And, believe it or not, there is a lot of, even between Republican and Democrat power structures, they're trading power at the top, right? I used to work in the Republican leader's office, and every week we had a standing meeting with Darrell Steinberg, who is the Senate President pro tem of the Senate. He's a Democrat. These guys would go to lunch and laugh about everything that was going on and broker deals in order to keep themselves in power, right? And you might want to cut this part out of the recording because then I'll get assassinated for revealing that. But it's true. I'd be like, aren't you? You guys were just beefing yesterday. What happened overnight? They're like, well, it's better Darrell's there than somebody else. It's like, bruh, like they heard you say that they would kill you. So the only way to truly hold any system, any political party accountable is by having that overwhelming grassroots voice where people are like, hey, look, you guys behind closed doors in a room, you're negotiating your own power structures. And there's an old, and you could look this up, this is public information. There's an old Republican Party leader, his name is Jim Brulte. And there's a woman who ran for assembly, her name was Cheryl Brown. And, he was like, you know what, we didn't win that seat. I'm gonna give her a big old $10,000 donation and send Republicans to walk for her in droves. And he did. It was a quiet campaign, and it was the worst kept secret around the Capitol. But he was like, look, if I do this for this person, then we'll get favors on this side. It's harder to pull off shenanigans like that when people are informed. So, I would encourage you all to get behind Bivette 150%. This is something that she's been talking about for a long time, and I agree with her, right? Structurally speaking, because I hate to see it too. She's been talking about this for at least 6 years that I can count, and she's getting closer and closer and closer to bringing that true accountability structure, to this part of the Democratic Party. Obviously, I'm not fully informed, but for what she tells me and what I've seen and how things operate, she's 100% correct. So, please don't let this go in vain. She means extremely well, and she's doing the right thing, and she gets beat up a lot for it. She gets a lot of crap, and man, but she's tough as nails, and even the most steadfast warrior can be overwhelmed by the inertia that is party structure. So just try to have her back if you can.
Well, I'll just say something, even though it's recorded, because I'm unapologetically standing in my truth. I actually stepped back from being a candidate this ADAM cycle because these candidates needed so much support and help. And it actually made me angry to see how they were treated by all of the people, all of the players around, just within this process. I saw some people reached out to me and was like, hey, Bivette, I'm thinking about running. Who should I talk to? I gave them the people who were running the various different slates across the city and was like, yeah, just reach out to them, talk to them. They're good people. And, you know, some of the people came back to me, was like, they never returned my call. They didn't return my email. I talked to them and they kind of discouraged me. I had one particular young lady, one of the persons told her that they would mentor her, and when in a public place, you know, in a public meeting, they told her that they would, you know, supporting her and all this. And when she actually called the woman to actually get the support and mentorship, the woman told her, I don't know anything about ADEM. You're on your own. And she was like, she was so hurt by that, because she was like, why would you tell me that? Why would you treat me like that? And the very next day, she saw that same woman on a slate. And it's that type of stuff that I'm against that. I want to stop that. I want people who actually want to make a difference in their community in these seats. I want people who are going to be accountable to the community in these seats. I want people who are willing to learn and work across the aisle with all people to make our Democratic Party better, because we're not going to get any better if we continue to have these very polarized partisan politics operating in our city. It's harming people and it's not good. And it doesn't help anyone, and definitely doesn't help poor people if the people with the most power are too busy fighting at the top to pay attention to the destruction that's happening at the bottom.
I have one other thing. We have about 4 minutes left. Micah, do you have a slate that you wish to share? And if you don't have access to it right now, if you could email it to me, I can share it with our group.
Nothing to share. Like I said, it would largely be redundant because the structures are largely the same, minus minus a few details here. But I want to be sensitive to times.
Actual people that you want to share.
Oh no, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. And then what was the other question I had? I don't remember it.
So along with all of this stuff, oh, Fiona, did you want to say something?
No, I think Maurice has had a hand raised for a bit.
Oh, sorry, Maurice. Go ahead, Maurice. I'm sorry.
No worries, Bavette. How is everyone doing?
So I can barely see the top. Blue against yellow, and then your hand's there. I'm like, oh, wait.
Bavette, I had a very quick question. I wanted to know, how can we empower the BIPOC community to stay more engaged in votes and stuff like this? Because it seems like there's this big push around an election year, like 5-6 months in advance, and then after the election we fall asleep and then we stay lazy until the next election. So how can we keep people engaged and keep people registered to vote in the off years so that we don't get lazy?
I will say that while it happens in the BIPOC community, it happens in all communities. The reason why it's so detrimental to the BIPOC communities is because we're usually most negatively impacted by bad policies, period. And so we have to be vigilant. We have to start paying attention. We have to start organizing. And we also have to start putting different people in the room. So this is one of the ways that we put different people in the room, because that's what happens. You put someone different in the room, what do? They share with their network. So if you keep having the same people in the room all the time, it's going to share with the same people and it's never going to get out to everyone else. And so our job as citizens is that, of course, we can't be at every meeting. Of course, it's not sustainable for us to say that we're everywhere. But if we spread it out kind of like in a grassroots way, and we don't centralize power to just a couple of people, then you can keep people more engaged. And so one of the things that I've been pushing for, and I will be pushing for next year, hopefully we'll get a bunch of people on the slate elected. As I showed the slate before, you actually can vote for 7 men and 7 women. So even if you voted for every single person on my slate, you could still vote for 6 more women and 3 more men on each side of the city. So it's not like we're taking up all of the positions. We just would like to have some significant representation going through in San Francisco so that we can start this kind of statewide movement towards equity in our party. And so there's some ways that I'm asking the community to help in the next couple of days. If you're available, like I said earlier, I've been doing a phone bank with the People's Delegate campaign. And we are trying to reach out to 5,000 voters by tomorrow. We are at about 2,000 voters. So if we can get more people to help us phone bank our neighbors, or even if they can reach out and send a text to people in their contacts to let them know to register to vote before tomorrow night at midnight. Other ways that they can help is sharing our social media posts on your timeline. So if you're in Facebook or Instagram and you're either following me or one of the other candidates, or you happen to see them, if you can repost, reshare, that ends up putting people into the different stratospheres and networks. I'm not sure, but the algorithms on Facebook have been like, I don't know. I haven't been able to see posts from some of my friends in like almost the whole year. So has anybody else been experiencing that as well on social media, not being able to see their full friends lists and stuff like that?
Yeah.
That's been happening to you, Paula?
Yeah, it changed last year. When they shifted the algorithm.
What about you?
Do we have your?
Yes. So my Instagram account is just my first name, Bavette. My social media on Facebook is Bavette Brackett. So I will put both of them in the chat, and you can find me on those, both of those. Usually I keep my posts open. So I think I'm over the 5,000 people limit right now. So I'm at the limit of who I can accept as friends, but you can still follow me. For some reason, I'm not able. Paula, can you put in the chat? Because for some reason it won't let me move my chat down.
Put in your email?
You can put my Instagram name account and also my Facebook name. So it's just my first and last name. And then my Instagram is @Bavette, just my first name. So you can learn more about the candidates, or you can also send us an email at e4slate@gmail.com. So that's basically our 4E that we're supporting, which is equity, education, environmental justice, and economic opportunity. And then also we are going to be having a ballot party on January 14th. So we are encouraging, and that ballot party will be happening with San Francisco Black Wall Street, which is another group of amazing community members who threw this year's Juneteenth festival amidst the pandemic. And they've been working very hard to bring more awareness around the how COVID is disproportionately impacting the Black community, and how the Black community is responding in a way to uplift and help ourselves. And so I'm also one of the co-founders for San Francisco Black Wall Street. And we just did a huge video this past Thursday on ADEM, and it's on our page as well. So if you want to follow our Facebook page for SF Black Wall Street, you can actually go in and see this video. That video also has these slides. So if there's anything that you guys want to review, the slideshow is in that video. It's a live video and it's on their web page. And we will also be announcing and putting the event page for the ballot party on the 14th. So that's going to be just us having fun, people looking over the ballot. It'll be also an opportunity for you to meet those candidates that I just showed you. And if you have any questions for them, you can actually ask them live. So before filling out your ballot, if you really want to vote for them or not. And we'll be giving out small gifts and stuff for people participating, and having a couple little quizzes and stuff like that, just so that people, you know, have fun. Like, I know a lot of this is serious, but within the Democratic Party, we do have a lot of fun too. And so I'm a fun person. Paula knows I like to have fun. I'm serious, but I also like to have fun. And I love to like joke and have a good time with my neighbors. So hopefully you guys will join the party and make sure you get your ballots. And I'm here for any questions or concerns you guys have. Feel free to email me, reach out. Yeah, does anyone else have any questions?
It looks like Maurice Rivers had a question in the chat. He says, I have a question. I'm not sure if we ever actually got to him.
He answered it. I'm good.
Okay.
Excellent. Well, if there are no other questions, then we could go ahead and close. I want to thank our candidates for coming and all supporters. And I hope this has been very informational for you, and that you feel empowered to do something to make change in your community and for everyone around you. And I will resend the email that has all of the things, because I know sometimes people just delete stuff after the event has happened. So I'll send all the links and everything again for you in the resource page. And
Thank you.
also, if you have not already, join our Facebook group, Glide Racial Justice. And then there's also a Facebook page. And that's where you can get recordings of all of our meetings to see what we're up to. And you can also see our slide decks from those meetings as well. And then we'll be working on these 6 initiatives openly there.
And I just want to again just thank the Glide community for having me here today. You guys have been awesome to even invite me to come and speak this evening. I just felt honored, and I'm happy to be in community with you all. And one more tidbit of information, I'm also a newly elected San Francisco Pride Board member. And I am now the coach. I'm a co-chair, but right now, because one of our members is having a little bit of family issues, I am the chair of the Community Affairs Committee. And so Pride this year will be Pride 365, which means year round. And we are going to be releasing this month, or possibly early next month, a survey into the community to really welcome people to become Pride members again. And we really want to have a diverse base. And while Pride typically happens only in June, we're looking, because of the pandemic, we're looking at doing something totally different this year and possibly making Pride be a celebration year round. So would love to have the Glide community come become members of Pride, attend our community meetings, and give us input on how we can connect or even do some activities with Glide and throughout the year that bring awareness and celebration to the LGBTQ community. So thank you guys.
Yes, I think
Thank
you have
you.
most of us on the Glide Pride team as well. So
Thank you.
all right.
Thank you so much.
Well, if there's nothing else,
Thank-
I will say good night, and we'll see you on the other side. Take care.
Okay, night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Blessings.
Love and
Thanks so
gratitude.
much.
Love you,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Do I stay on, Paula? Look, here to be ended.
You're still the host. So.
Okay, we'll end it. Bye.